quick scan here. We can go ahead and get started. So first of all, Happy New Year's, everybody. Good to see you here. First meeting in 2023. And just hope everyone had a good time of resting and refresh. And now we're getting ready back, get started with the business of the FAC. I know we've made this available for public, and we'll see if we have anyone. I'm not seeing anyone joining yet in the public, but I'll keep an eye on that. If that happens, then I'll let them know sort of what we're up to. Again, this is, as you know, this is our third meeting of our Acquisition Workforce Subcommittee under FAC. And as we've done before, we provide time at the end to allow public participants to jump in and add. We have a fairly straightforward agenda today, so I'm going to turn this over to Daryl and Nicole in a minute here. But just to let you know, we're recording this meeting and making this available as well as the previous meetings, which are already on the website. So I'm Boris Arratia, you guys all know, designated federal officer, and my colleague Stephanie Hardison as well, deputy designated federal officer as well. So we're excited to get going. And so I'm going to turn this over to Daryl and Nicole to get us going here.
Great. Thank you, Boris. As you recall, last meeting, we decided this public meeting was going to be a working session where we would actually go through our priorities that we've discussed so far, maybe discuss a little bit about what we've heard in some of the presentations, and at the end, determine to some degree if we can get down to at least 2 or 3 priorities, maybe 2. I think that's the number we're looking for, that we can focus on and get some definition around and make sure that we can achieve something significant around those priorities. So, the agenda is pretty straightforward. I would like maybe after we have the discussion to talk about speakers for if we think we might need a speaker the next time, or if we need to have another working session. And just a reminder that we do have our administrative meeting next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So with that, Nicole, unless you had any other opening statements or remarks, I say let's just dive right into it based upon what we had on the Google Docs document.
Hey, Daryl.
Yeah.
Before moving forward, it must be just the start in the new year. There's one step I forgot to take, and doing the roll call. So my apologies. So let me do that real quick. So I'm just going to call the names, and I've got both of you, Daryl and Nicole. So I get that. Let me see. How about Gail? I see Gail. All right. How about Mark Hayden? Let's see, Mark. How about David Malone? Anne Rung, I see Anne.
Yep.
Steve Schooner. All right, great. See Steve Schooner as well. Kristen, I see Kristen. And Clyde. All right.
Great.
Very well. Back to you, sir. My apologies. Okay.
We have a quorum. That's the great thing about having a small committee. Right. So I'm going to kick this over to Nicole. She and I discussed a way to facilitate this discussion in terms of priorities and kind of setting priorities. Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Daryl. And it's great to see everyone. I hope you had a terrific winter break and Happy New Year. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm super excited to be here with you to see that happen. In the chat, I put a link to the Google Doc, which you all are familiar with. And I want to thank you for being attentive to the homework assignments that Daryl and I have been pushing your way. There are 12 priorities that you've identified here. And I think as a way to kick this off, it would be very helpful for each of the individuals, and we'll just go in order, to identify their top 2 priorities, because hearing you read them out loud, hearing others read theirs out loud, and to provide a bit of logic behind what you see there, I think is going to help hear our conversation today. So I would suggest that as a starting point. I have set up a Jamboard platform where we're going to be using sticky notes, moving stuff around, identifying key themes as a way, hopefully, to help facilitate our process to honing our vision towards these 2 priorities. But with that, Kristen, would you like to kick us off? Because you're first on the list. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Kristen.
I know, I have not figured out how to move between windows, so I'm sorry about that. So now that I'm off mute, let me go back to the other document. Sure. Thanks, Nicole. And I don't know if anyone else is as challenged as me. So based on just some of the discussions and listening to some of the speakers, what I listed as priority was, making recommendations that would help identify knowledge, confidence gaps of the workforce and develop solutions to address. So kind of discovering, based on this huge, challenging problem we're all trying to solve and what that will mean for the acquisition workforce, what are the largest gaps, and then what are some solutions that could help mitigate those gaps. And then kind of along those lines, based on what we learn is, are there tools or processes that could make the acquisition workforce's job easier through the lens of climate risk and sustainability efforts that are coming their way?
Great, thanks. I'm up next. As I was thinking through this, a lot of what you had identified, Kristen, resonated with me. And then as I started reading some of the others, I think we're going to see some common themes here. So my first priority was to identify the critical levers needed to make environmental and sustainable acquisition the default in federal acquisition. And I thought this was very similar to your priority number 2. And then second, to identify the critical pathways needed for the federal acquisition workforce to develop a shared understanding of environmental and sustainability concerns, believing that we need a foundation in place, a solid foundation before we start building and moving decisions in a productive way. We need that shared understanding. Daryl.
Sure. As you explained yours, I guess it sort of aligns with my thinking here, although I was also combining 2 things. I'm trying to get to how do they evaluate, and I think this is a result of the last presentation. I got, as a private business owner, I'm always concerned with how the clients are evaluating my proposal. So I got to really thinking about that, and I was thinking, that's a big deal. It's not just checking the box, but how does the procurement people evaluate beyond checking the box? And I feel like that's some kind of tool they could really use. But again, they have to have the foundation and understanding of the definitions and the criteria that you just talked about. So I probably got 2 in 1 there.
Clyde.
Okay, thank you. And my 2 priorities is sort of like built off the ones before me, so I don't want to repeat what the others have said. But Daryl more than said what I wanted to say is that when I first heard our speakers speak, I was not aware it's much knowledge and much work that has already been done on sustainability and in climate procurement resources. And so I was thinking that maybe we need to come up with some procedures, some sustainability requirements, but apparently they already exist. So as Daryl said, I'm saying the same thing. Maybe we need now to focus on the acquisition workforce and how give them some instructions and procedures as to how to implement sustainability requirements within the procurement process. And so, without repeating what Daryl said, I'm trying to say the same thing. And then my second one is the how our sustainability requirements implemented by the acquisition workforce. Then maybe we could focus on mixed codes, or maybe we could focus on contract types, because last week the speaker that was speaking to us, the name was Mr. Calloway, talked about how mostly sustainability requirements are in the product providers. So maybe we can look at contract types and see which contracts lend itself to products and which mixed codes lend itself to products, and then focus on that. And then last, I want to say this, my last thing is I think some of the other work subcommittees are looking at sustainability requirements. And then once they develop their requirements, whatever they may be, and then we can focus on how to help the acquisition workforce implement those requirements that the other subcommittee is working on. And that's the approach that I took.
Gail.
So after all of the understandings have been done, all the education of the sustainability requirements to the acquisition workforce has been done, then to me, we need to think about the outreach and identify relevant and meaningful ways to inform, educate, and engage the smaller minority contractors on these sustainability and environmental procurement requirements. And then pretty much take, and I didn't put this one here, but also to, in the education and outreach, how do we partner or provide resources, activities, or I would say capacity building activities to help these smaller minority contractors engage with other larger contractors so that they can compete. Because listening to one of the presenters, she had a challenge with finding these smaller minority vendors. And really it's because of that lack of resources that they're not able to participate in some of these activities. So my whole priorities would be to find ways to include the participation. I guess I probably could have said it better, to promote the inclusion and participation of more smaller minority businesses in this sustainability procurement requirements, and to educate them in this regard.
I can see where this priority area really intersects with the work that Kristen and the industry group is advancing as well. This is going to be an important component, asking to what extent the federal acquisition workforce connects with that other side of industry partnerships. Thank you. Anne.
Yeah, my thinking behind number one was this notion of starting with the customer working backwards. And we can't presume to know what the challenges are. And those challenges are going to dictate very different recommendations. And for example, is if one challenge identified by the workforce is that they don't actually believe that selecting green products and or addressing sustainability requirements are going to deliver the best value for government, then all the training in the world isn't going to fix that. And that may require a different type of solution. Or if the acquisition workforce feels like they don't have leadership support, my boss doesn't care. My boss never asked me about it. Why should I prioritize it? That's not addressed either by training. And so I think GSA has some effective tools by which we could quickly assess from the workforce the top challenging areas and build our recommendations around that. We could think about some type of survey where it's very simple, a few questions. I mean, maybe we have a drop down of suggested, areas they may want to prioritize and then allowing them to choose others. But I'm getting into tactics. But the notion here is let's start with the end users and work backwards in solving the problem. For the second one, this was really similar to, oh yeah, sorry, Daryl.
Clarity on the first one.
Yeah.
Don't we have to assume that there's buy-in there, from the staff? This isn't, I mean, you made the point that they may not think this is the best value, or doing it this way is the best value, but the instructions are to do it this way. And now the question is, how do you evaluate it once you get it in your hands? Isn't that really, don't we have to make that assumption and not so much be concerned whether or not they believe this is the way to go?
First of all, that was just an example. That's not necessarily one of the reasons we have to include, or if we even include reasons and we just allow them to articulate what the top challenges are. But I wouldn't assume that there's buy-in, and it's very different having a regulation or some requirement, but there's always exceptions and ways to allow for flexibility with the workforce, and maybe some of those are being used because they don't have buy-in. But I don't want to presume that that's one of the priority areas. For the second one, my thinking here is that in a perfect world, we shouldn't be asking the acquisition workforce to be environmental experts or labor law experts or social justice experts. We should be allowing them primarily to just do their job, what they're trained to do. And so I was thinking a little bit about the game changer for Amazon was one-click shopping. They made it so frictionless, so easy that it drove more users to the site. And so my thinking here was something similar, which has already been articulated a few times. It's like, how do you make this so easy that we really do empower the workforce? How do we make it frictionless? And it could be technology solutions. It could be more playbooks. It could be technologies that default to certain things. That's my thinking behind number 2.
That's great. Thank you, Anne. I was reflecting on your first point and thinking it's a very typical organization change problem, that people don't like change, even if they know they have to change. And the resistance that comes slows the change process. So how do we keep those wheels greased? Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, you really have to understand what's going on. Steve, you're up next, and you're joining us from an airport lounge.
Yeah, so can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay, so yes, greeting from the United Lounge at Dulles Airport. And I apologize that I'm going to leave the meeting relatively early, but let me begin by saying I could easily shoehorn my suggestions into some of the suggestions that others have made. And I apologize if mine are more narrow, but I'm cognizant of Jeff's marching orders from the beginning about short-term achievable wins rather than just long-term aspirations. So my first, and Nicole has done a nice job shortening this, but I'm going to do it at full length. But my question was, how can we, whether it's prompt or drive or encourage or accelerate the primary government training and knowledge management organizations or institutions? So I'm talking about the Defense Acquisition University. I'm talking about the Federal Acquisition Institute. I'm talking about the Veterans Affairs Acquisition Academy. How can we prod them to make sustainable procurement a core competency? and increase the volume and the diversity of courses and training materials. And that's introductory, required, and ultimately advanced. And I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but going back to Ann's point, particularly for those of you that don't live frequently in the government space, understand that every contracting officer for the United States government ultimately goes through a certification process. They must learn and they will be tested on the core competencies. So unless and until sustainable procurement is treated as a core competency for training and certification purposes, the message to the entire workforce is less important than everything else that I'm being taught. And so I think that that's, again, I like Nicole's truncating of that down to the core competency, but that's what I was going for. Should I go on to the second or?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So my second one, again, this is more the short term, but the idea behind the second one is assuming that the primary, or at least the first sustainable procurement rule, the one that's in the notice and comment process, requires contractors to assess, disclose, and target or try to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and climate-related financial risks. It seems to me the question is, how can we increase the federal acquisition workforce's familiarity and understanding of those concepts and the information? Or in other words, and this is what some of you were talking about earlier, how can we empower the government to actually do something with the information that the contractors are going to be providing to actually turn it into something useful? And my concern is, if we don't start now, the rulemaking will take a long time, the rule will get passed, and it'll take years before the acquisition workforce knows how to take advantage of all of the information that's being generated.
Jeff, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thanks. I wanted to pick up on one of the points that Steve made. Not sure if anyone has shared with this committee yet, but a couple of years ago, DoD moved to a new acquisition training curriculum that they called Back to Basics. In the next couple of weeks, GSA will be the first civilian agency to move to that new curriculum. The curriculum is based on the idea of a lifelong learning model. There's 4 core courses in and across the major areas of acquisition. But then, and I think directly on point, Steve, let me ask you, it features a series of credentials. So what that would let us do, if you all went with Steve's thought, is create a new credential in climate and sustainability, define what goes into it, how does somebody earn that, how do they basically get certified or credentialed in climate and sustainability.
And to Jeff's point, you could argue that the single most significant aspect of what drove DoD to Back to Basics was the first 2 decades of what we call our DAWIA experience, the Defense Acquisition Workforce Act, was that DoD spent a lot of money training everybody to know how to do everything, which was deemed incredibly inefficient. And so now there's going to be more of a focus on the basics, but greater investment in the specialty skills. I guess my fantasy, to Jeff's point, would be to get sustainability to be part of the core basic, but also to have tracks so that people buying different things could also get specialty knowledge. This is something we've talked about a lot. The people who are buying buildings need to know a lot about LEED, but they probably don't need to know as much about buying commercial products and vice versa. But in any event, I think that, I did not realize that GSA and FAI were moving in the back to basics direction, but I do think that core competency is a really big deal.
You could see a world in which focus around core competency is complemented by the other priority area, maybe as a secondary priority area of in addition to that, how do we also make this as easy as possible? How do we automate things? How do we standardize? How do we default? So even with a core competency built into acquisition training, ultimately there's still acquisition professionals, and we want to make this as easy as possible. Yeah.
I'd like to transition because there are a lot of ideas that are out here. And then the question becomes, how do we make sense of them? We have some common themes, I think. And as Daryl and I were brainstorming about how to manage this, the thought of a Jamboard or a Miro board would be the best device to help facilitate us. So I've tried to set something up. You may or may not be familiar with the Jamboard. It is an easier version of a Miro. I've given you a link in the document or in the chat. Go ahead and click on that link. And I'm going to give you some Jamboard basics first before we get started.
Hey, Nicole, would you like me to share my screen and I can, if that would be easier, I can just use my
share screen is,
Way to be on GSA.
I think it's
Yeah.
fine. Share the screen. If individuals want to interact with the board, they'll need the link.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
We can.
Okay.
We can. So on the Jamboard basics, so we have sticky notes and the arrows pointing to this little sticky note on the left-hand side. You can duplicate them. You can copy them, duplicate, and then add it over. If you double click on it, then you can change the text. You can also change the color if you so choose. But go ahead and get in here and play with this a little bit. This is the board where we can mess around. We can move the sticky notes around. Just get a little bit familiar with how this works. If you have a lot to say, it won't work for a sticky note. And instead, you need to use this text box. And let me see. Let me pull up my text box. So you have two options, but I think the easiest is your sticky note. And I just want you to be aware with how these get moved around, how you can shape them in a way that works for you. And then finally, we'll be playing with these little circles here at the bottom as we identify priorities. And you can copy these and paste them as you do with a sticky note. It's all pretty simple. Because it's on a Google platform, we have access to it here, and this can live within our Google Drive. So there are certain advantages of it. The disadvantage of this platform is it's not nearly as sophisticated as Miro. So with that, are there any questions about how this thing will function? And if you're unable to get in, if you're calling in, and you want to add something, just go ahead and pop it in the chat and we'll be sure to do that for you. All right. If there are no questions, I want you to look at the top of this Jamboard and you see this little icon that says 1 out of 7. You can press that right arrow and it'll take you to the next page. So today's aims are to brainstorm on our top priorities. We have 12 listed. And so our next step will be to hone and shape these priorities before coming to those top 2 that Daryl had identified at the top of the meeting. And this is where we're going to focus our time between now and April. And then once we've honed these priorities, we need to ask ourselves, what sort of information do we need as the committee to inform recommendations around these priorities? Because that's going to help us identify which speakers and what types of speakers we should be bringing in moving forward. All right. But before we get there, I think we need to ask ourselves, and we've already started, what makes something a priority? because it could be that some of the items in our list of 12 priorities are important, but based on how we define a priority, we might say, well, that's important, but that's second tier. So I'd like to hear from the group, or you can just write on a sticky if you want. What you think should be used as a criteria to define our priorities.
Can you still see my screen? Are you able to read there?
We can.
All right.
I've added my green circle to Anne's advance our mission because I also agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm being a little vocally self-critical on the, it should not be a tactic. I think mine on like this, you know, identify top 3 challenges that could be considered a tactic. Once we hone in on a focus area, that might be one thing we deploy to help us get even more focus, but.
Simple to implement, low-hanging fruit with big impact. Advance our mission. Strategic. Easy to understand and execute. Other thoughts?
For Steve Schooner was denied access. That was intentional, Steve. I'm kidding. No. I'm wondering if it's just funky Wi-Fi where you are. I don't know.
It could also be that you're logged into another Google account and you need to ensure that you're logged into your GSA Google account.
Right. Yeah, you'll need the GSA Google account. But we
You
can
could always just tell us to.
Yeah, you can drop it in the chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
That's funny, Anne.
now, Nicole, now, just for the record here, now I have my stuff here. I just got a problem. I can't work the Jamboard, and so but people are putting what's on my paper on the board anyway. So I'm just gonna let it be. I got the board here. I'm on it, but I'm just a little bit challenged trying to. But it doesn't matter now because the 3 things I had are sitting right there now anyway. So.
All right. Thanks, Clyde. And please, if we're missing anything, just pop it in the chat and we'll try to fit in. We'll try to fit in. Who just got in? Who's Kay?
Maybe Steve.
It's Kristen.
Oh, it's Kristen.
She's on iPhone now, it looks like.
I had to, I'm struggling with the GSA account. So I got in, now I'm in. So I'm on the phone and the computer. That made
Perfect.
twice. Well, I wouldn't call it perfect, Nicole, but we'll make it work. So what are we putting on the stickies? I apologize.
What makes something a priority?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And we've got some pretty good ideas here. With the idea that these ideas are going to help shape where we land with our top two. So I put a little green circle on Anne's, but I feel the same way about all of these. I agree with everything up here. These are important characteristics of a priority. But is there anything anyone else would like to add? Oh, I like this. We might consider having the top two complementary.
I know it's a little obtuse, but I mean, you know, I wouldn't want to go into really divergent directions.
Sure, sure. It also creates a lot of more learning burden on us in a very short time frame. Is there anything you would like, anyone else would like to add before we go on to the 12 items that were introduced earlier? I think this is a pretty good list.
So, well, I'm wondering from Troy and Cassius about the committee and having our priorities. I know this is how we're going to evaluate the priorities. I'm wondering, is there anything here from a committee standpoint that need to be considered? Committee of the whole, or whatever you call them.
I'd also add GSA into this too, like hearing from Boris and Jeffrey and Stephanie and others, what their thoughts are.
Right. To help us with the priorities or evaluate priorities.
Yeah, and I would agree. I wasn't saying anything. I want to let you guys kind of speak up, but I do think one of these boxes, maybe something about GSA being able to act on this area might be something to consider putting in there.
I like that.
Yeah.
And this is Troy. I'm so sorry. I'm participating by phone today, so I unfortunately can't see your ideas in the sticky notes, and I will I can hardly wait to get home and be able to plug in and look at them that way. So I feel a little disadvantaged here, but I also just would reiterate, I very much want to hear from GSA about like where they think the gaps are and where our recommendations could be most impactful.
Steve, you want to jump in? I see you've got, actually, and before we go to Steve, let me give space for Jeff and Stephanie to jump in.
And sorry about that. This is Kat. I'm sorry. I just was just seconding Troy. I was watching on video as well too. I just switched to phone, but we can definitely circle back, and I did get a chance to view it as well too. Definitely, of course, Sue, looking forward to GSA's participation. I think it definitely will be helpful.
Gail made a really important point earlier about alignment with the work that's going on the other subcommittees. She pointed to some potential interplay between what you're going to recommend and the industry group. I think that's a really important point to keep in mind as we work all of this through. Having listened to the overview of the suggestions that you all talked about, I think you've nailed this in the descriptions, and I'd suggest at least a couple of those are really clearable, actionable, but they're also unique. They're not things that are happening pretty much anywhere else, and a great opportunity to make GSA the accelerant in this space. So that's just maybe one more addition is, where is the opportunity for GSA to be the example center, the accelerant for federal acquisition? Otherwise, I'd really like your list a whole lot.
And Nicole, I just wanted to say as well, for me, for someone who has been in acquisition, easy to implement, simple, easy to understand and execute for all your diverse learners out there and professionals. To me, I mean, all the points are good, but those two right there, I think, to me, would really drive something home for acquisition.
Steve, I see you've popped some items in the chat. You wanna jump in before we move on to the next?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my main takeaway from this, listening to what people are saying, seeing what's on the Jamboard, and then also some of my correspondence with Jeff, I'm increasingly thinking that the term or the concept of core competency in a sentence with sustainable procurement seems like a growing priority to me in terms of what this committee could achieve. And I'm pretty open-minded or flexible in terms of what that means. But I think that going back to where Ann was before and what a lot of others have said, and even in terms of how the private sector interacts, unless and until something with regard to sustainable procurement is a core competency to acquisition, it's not in play. And there's a lot of different ways to get there, and that's more specific than I think we need to get to. But again, if I was on the Jamboard, I would be trying to use lots of colors to emphasize and circle and maybe have flashing colors around the concept of core competency.
I think that's an important point, Steve, and I think it's also a good segue to our next slide. So if you transition to the third one, these are the 12 ideas here. And one of the themes that I think is bearing out is this notion of core competency. At least that's something that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Related to training, education. How do we create the core foundational understanding within this space? So for theme one, I'm going to pop in core competency. Interesting. There we go. Learning some of the limitations here.
And I'm sorry, Nicole, while you're typing and while Jeff is still with us and I'm still here, Jeff, is core competency the right term for GSA and FAI? I mean, I know it's the right term at DAU.
Based on where we are with moving towards a new curriculum, I'm translating that to mean credential, and to create a credential in sustainable purchasing. The new core competency is going to be 4 classes that are kind of the overview of acquisition. It's acquisition overview, pre-award, award, and administration. That's the new government-wide core competency term as such. DAU stood that up. GSA will be standing that up sometime in January. Just waiting on the last legal clearance on the memo. But the really cool thing about it is it then lets us create this whole set of credentials. That's why I loved that idea when you presented it earlier today, and I heard very similar thoughts from Anna and a couple of others. So my translation of that, using the language we would use, is one possible recommendation is create a new credential in sustainable purchasing, with the long-term actions being define what does it take to be credentialed? What is the training? What is the experiential components? What's the reading? How does somebody get approved and recognized as being an innovator, a thought leader, an expert in this space? And how do they keep that over time? Steve, that's what I kind of took out of that part of the discussion. Clearly, I'm not telling you all you need to adopt that, but that's one that I think is a really intriguing recommendation and is a way to really build a whole nest of champions of this whole way of thought across the agency.
And Jeff, I'm sorry, did you say there's already something underway to create a competency around sustainability, or?
No, there's work underway about creating credentials, both at the agency level and the government-wide level. We can certainly get you all a briefing on what are credentials, how do they work, how do they get created. But there is not one right now on sustainability. So that would be a very interesting recommendation.
I see. Okay.
Jeff, could you provide some examples of other credentials that are out there?
Sure, Daryl. GSA is looking at one for leasing. Now, we lease 8,000 federal buildings. It's somebody who's an expert in leasing. We are looking at one in construction for people who would do construction contracting. OFPP is looking at one on innovation. And how do you apply the ideas of innovation to acquisition? We had not given any thought at all to does that apply to sustainability, but that's what I heard out of the first hour of this conversation.
Okay, I got it.
You know, so Daryl, if you all are interested, I'm happy to get you a speaker for a future meeting to go over what is credential in a much greater level of detail.
Hey, Jeff, before you stop this riff, could you say a word about whether you think that along those lines, since you brought up innovation, there's a potential 18F type analog or potential here within GSA?
What do you mean by an 18F analog, Steve? Being the thought leader and helping other agencies to think through the process?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If we create that, of course there is, absolutely.
I'm not sure I understood all that.
18F, it was a thought shop set up within GSA to be on the forefront of digital acquisition. You may recall when healthcare.gov launched, there were lots and lots of challenges, and two groups were set up, the U.S. Digital Services in OMB and 18F, to bring digital service expertise into GSA. So that's what Steve is referring to, Daryl.
Got it.
I think the competency one or credentialing also might tie into Steve's priority area of working through established institutions, however it's executed. But obviously, if we're developing a credential, we're going to use established institutions, and we may draw on other teams like 18F for input and thought leadership. But ultimately, it's going to be executed through, in a short time frame, through the established channels.
So as a next step, I'd like for each of you all to take your different Jamboard items, and if it maps into this area that you believe, or if you believe it maps into this area for competency, credentialing, training, just go ahead and move your sticky in that space. And this is going to help us then visualize what other common themes we have here.
Sorry, say that again. Move the sticky.
Yep. So I'm moving mine right now into the core credentialing space.
Oh, I see. So if you think yours should be under there.
Yep. Anything related to education, training, shared understanding, go ahead and pop it down in there. And then we can free ourselves to think about what the second theme is here among our priorities. Yeah, Jamboard has a limitation on the number of words you can put on a sticky. So Anne, yours,
Yeah,
a couple.
I was too wordy.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
I think
it's pretty powerful.
Right. I guess I said earlier, I think some of mine were tactics that you can employ as you're thinking through the certification process. What are the top challenges? And we could get input from the workforce.
Maybe someone can answer this, maybe Jeff or someone from GSA, but is there currently, is there a sustainability group within the organization or department or division or some group that currently defines or seek solutions, other than procurement? I mean, there's some other group within GSA.
Daryl, there are multiple people in multiple organizations who are trying to apply that to different concepts, to federal buildings, for example, to vehicles and so forth. But what there's not is look for the right words. There's not anything that draws that together and gives people an accreditation as a recognized expert. But there definitely are many thought leaders on that space across the agency.
But those thought leaders are tied to other divisions or other groups. There's not a sustainability group or a sustainability department or something like that.
There's not a sustainability department. There are cells within other organizations that focus on sustainability.
Okay.
Right. For example, Daryl, when we had Katie Miller and then Brandon Conaway that came and spoke, they both work at Federal Acquisition Service, and they happen to have the expertise, but they really support the Federal Acquisition Service, bringing some focus to sustainability. But as Jeff said, they're dispersed across different parts of GSA.
And then,
Okay.
of course, you have within the White House, the Council on Environmental Quality, CEQ.
Yeah, I have a quick question about item 10 here at the bottom. I wonder whether this is core competency and like education and training, or whether this is about thinking through the other approaches that we might be able to take to facilitate sustainable procurement that may actually rest outside the boundaries of training and education. It could be that we don't have the right tools in place. It could be that we need better technologies or something else. So I just want to get a little bit of conversation around that.
Yeah, it's a good question, Nicole. Like I put it underneath credentialing because we have such a short time span that if there's some parallel effort to try to, for instance, do a technology solve for like, how do you make shopping for green products more frictionless? That is not like a multi-month project. That's probably years. And so the way I was thinking about it now is, if there are things we can do to reduce the friction, like create templates and playbooks, maybe that could be part of the resources that are integrated into the credentialing program.
And maybe what I'm looking for, it would certainly help me, potentially others in the group, is to get a sense from our GSA partners about the expectations for our recommendations. Because, for instance, borrowing on Anne's example of the technological solution, if green or sustainable items aren't popping up on the searches, or if individuals are thinking through the barriers of getting their work done, and they're having to go search for green products to fulfill the sustainability requirements, and that's creating a barrier. Is it enough for us to say that that GSA should be looking for ways to automate this process or to make green products more visible? Or is it a case that we're expected to, as a team, provide much more fine-grained recommendations on how that might work?
Nicole, I don't know that would tell us a lot to say make green items more visible. We need quite a bit more detail on what does that mean. There's many different attributes. There's many different eco labels. How do we compare those? How do we prioritize amongst them? Where and how do we want to balance them against other purposes of the system? You know, something like that would be a good recommendation in that long-term category, but it's much more in giving us much more of an operational sense of what does that actually mean and what's at least one or two ways to implement it.
So I think this is really useful because I think as a committee, we've never really heard the extent to which these recommendations should be finely grained. And so I would say at some point it would be quite useful as we move towards recommendations, the expectations from GSA with respect to the detail associated with those recommendations. And maybe it would be sufficient just to see what other FACs have done with respect to their short-term reports, so we could draw some inspiration from that as well. Clyde, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, maybe this is the same question that you're asking now, but my question is, and maybe it was asked and answered, but currently as we speak right now, do GSA or anybody recommends that certain things be in certain procurements, and as a contracting officer, and I must say this requirement must go into this procurement in order to get sustainability? I mean, does that exist? Is there something that says in every procurement goes out, construction, service, supply, whatever, to meet the sustainability requirements, this statement must go in there, and the contracting officer must require this from the vendor? Does that exist already?
But there's certainly some of that within existing FAR clauses. There's some of that around things such as USDA's bio-preferred program, around EPA's program. There's a number of things that talk about some of the different things that are out there. But, you know, it's easy when it's mandatory, go by X.
Right.
You know, we know how to do that. That's not where we're saying we need help. It gets much harder when we get to how do I get the workforce comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to go pay more to buy X, or hey, I know I might face a protest, but I can go defend my decision to include that as a discretionary factor.
Okay. Connect one more question then. Then if you took a survey of the contracting officers in a certain agency, will they know that there are requirements from GSA on sustainability that they should be looking for in their procurement? If you just take agency X and then ask for all the CEOs in that agency, will they even know what we're talking about right now?
You know, will they know that they're supposed to buy recycled copier paper, for example? Probably.
Okay.
Will they know that there's a program called Energy Star? Maybe.
Okay.
Will they know how to apply it if there is not a designated label or indicator? Likely not.
Understand. And that's where my struggle is right now. Okay. Because see, I thought it was easy just to say the requirements already exist. And then to the extent that they do not exist, there's another subcommittee working on sustainability requirements. And then once all that's done, then our subcommittee would just have to create some templates on how a CO or the acquisition workforce should implement those requirements. That's what I was thinking. But as we talk more, I'm hearing different now. And that's okay.
Boris, I think you wanted to jump in earlier.
I was going to make a point, not necessarily related here to this, but the fact that you can go into different timelines for your recommendations. You know, if you're looking at April, maybe that's a short term. but you can certainly pick up something that's going to take longer than April. So I just want to reassure you with that. We're looking for some short-term wins, quick wins, absolutely. But we also want to, as a subcommittee, you definitely have the opportunity to look at things that are going to take longer. And I think I was reacting to some of the things Ann was saying, and some of these things are just not going to happen quickly. So that do keep that in mind, that you don't have to have everything, what you're discussing right now, done by April. Just wanted to put that out.
Can you remind me the deliverables and the timeline? I'm not entirely clear.
So we are planning to meet again as a full committee by the end of April. And so our expectation there is by that time, we would like to see, even if it's just one recommendation that comes out of the subcommittee that you feel is optionable, that's what we would consider success. And Jeff, feel free to chime in on this, but that's what we're looking for, to have some quick wins. And that's the timeline that we currently have. So looking at the end of April, and I made the point that you can definitely be working on things that are going to take longer than that. So you could have a mix, you could have a hybrid, a portfolio of things that you're taking on. Not all of them have to be done by April. And so that's the idea right now. And that's what we consistently want to communicate to all the subcommittees.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Boris. But what does that look like? Is it a written document?
That could be an advice letter. Yeah, it'll be a written document, correct? That could be a report. So there's different formats. We're not looking for a 400-page report, like, for example, what was produced with the PC SCOTUS Commission. We're definitely not looking for that. I think in our conversation with Jeff, and you can definitely add more to that, but we're not looking for a massive document here, something that's more usable than that. But yeah, a written document, and we definitely we will provide more guidance on that. We talked a little bit about it with the chairs, the subcommittee chairs, but we will definitely provide more guidance. I don't know if either Jeff or Stephanie wanted to add.
I just wanted to mention that we do have examples of both reports and advice letters. So we'll make sure to get that to you all. And some people even do presentations and slides. It really depends on the, your short-term goal might be a little more less in depth than your long-term goal, right? So we'll definitely provide you with those formats and letters, so that you can review.
Think of it, Anne, more as a clear written roadmap. Where are you recommending that GSA go, and how do we know if we got there?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is useful because I think it liberates us a little bit from thinking that each of these key priority areas need to be solved by April. That we should be thinking about the priority areas as something that guide us in the short term, but also the long term.
Right.
Are you going to create some consistent guidelines across the subcommittees? Like, okay, 5 to 10 page report, whatever it is. So it all kind of looks the same.
Yeah,
We have a document, like we already have something. And I think we sent it out earlier on. We'll make sure to put that back out again for everyone.
Oh, you already sent something, Stephanie, sorry.
It was months ago. It was a couple months ago, but I'll definitely put it back in the group in the share drive. Got it.
What are some of the highlights? Like you sent out a template?
I sent out, it was a sort of like a template, the font sizes, introduction, overview, conclusion. It just gave just a format of what should be included, what may not be included, that type of thing.
Okay.
And it also provided some examples of other advice letters and reports that had been submitted previously.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, I missed that.
So let's go ahead and head back to the Jamboard and start thinking about other themes that we see here. When I was looking at 10, Anne, and this is why I called it out, I saw it as similar to item 3 and thinking about these levers, which may or may not relate to education.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Like it's sort of the removing friction, making it easy, one-stop shopping. It doesn't have to be shopping, by the way. That's just an analogy. I'm not just talking about green products, but
you know, I'm wondering if we could well, I'll look at this. I'm looking at the time, and I'm trying to figure out if we should allow time here for any comments from the public.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly open it up now if there's anybody else that wants to chime in. I mean, it's your call. Yeah. Mhm.
Sure. I don't see any, so I don't know if there are members of the public on the call, but I wanted to make space for that. And then also, I didn't want to forget the need or the desire to talk about other speakers that we may need, but maybe we'll see them as we get to some more of the priorities.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track here, and I think at some point and I think Nicole, you got a really nice plan going here. It's just to get to a point where maybe people will get vote on their top, and then you can see how the votes shake out.
Yeah,
I think that's right. We have the second general thematic area related to critical levers and tools to help amplify sustainability in the federal acquisition process. I'd like to look at the remaining 4 items that are here. Educate small and minority contractors, inform and engage program partners about industry. These are really connecting with our industry subcommittee, industry partnership subcommittee. Item 12, identify the ways in which federal acquisition workforce can use contractor information to it. Oh, this was related. I think this was Steve's related to the climate risk plans that contractors will be submitting. How does that information then get used in the acquisition process? And then how are sustainability requirements implemented by the acquisition workforce?
Kristen, you're lucky you're in this subcommittee because you can answer to that.
I'm sorry, I wrote the text box there. So Gail, I think those were Gail's. I sent her, Gail, would you be open to us moving those over into the industry partnership subcommittee?
Sure.
Was that, I don't want to speak to you, but was that kind of your intent were you thinking about that?
Pretty much. I guess we can reword this for the acquisition workforce though, because as they are being trained, this is a key point also. I understand that they need to have a full understanding of what sustainability is, but keeping in mind, I don't know, just go ahead and push it over to the industry. That's fine.
Well, were you thinking, so now I'm listening differently, like about having the lens of the requirement, like across the spectrum of the industry, which there's an important element of the small and minority owned, like that they have to have that lens as well. Is that?
Sure, yes.
And then we have Clyde number 7, and I think Steve identified 12 as well. Clyde, do you want to talk about item 7? Do you see it fitting in these other categories, or do you see this as distinctly different? Or do you see it as a first stage or second stage area?
The way I'm looking now, where do we put how to implement? Wherever we put that item, I'm thinking that should be in that area.
Right. So I think the critical levers and tools to implement.
Yeah, I'm thinking now that I heard all of the discussion, it should, if you
Yeah.
keep it, it should go there.
Got it.
No. And Nicole, maybe, just going back to Gail's thought, we had this discussion way early on about how the acquisition workforce has to leverage and focus on all the priorities, right? So not just climate, they have to be able to focus on climate and sustainability also within the context of small business priorities, also within the context of whatever those competencies or requirements are. So that might fall under the tools, like making sure that priorities are linked.
Yep. I think you're right, Kristen. I'm struggling now to think about what the next steps are because it looks like we have two themes. So maybe the key is we can we have our and perhaps I should check in with the team. Are we in agreement that we have two general themes here that we would like to focus on as a committee?
I'd like to say, let's at least start here and maybe work with our GSA partners to identify speakers around these two themes. And then we can revisit this again and think about if this is, critical enough for us to move forward with or not. If something is achievable, but I feel like I can't agree to a theme until I hear more about credentialing or more about the tools. How do you implement these tools? I want to know if this is something that could really happen, or is this something that we're just dreaming about?
So I have one suggestion, kind of putting my facilitator hat on. Something that might help here is using the chat. You could ask each member of your subcommittee to pick like their top three, and this is even within categories, not themes, just not looking even at categories, but just looking because they're numbered. And you could ask each member, say, okay, what are your top three? And then just kind of add up votes and see what that's looking like.
So
Just to see if you're coalescing around some specific ones here, because that would be an easy.
You read my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take it a step further. We have a little green dot in the upper right corner and a white dot. Use the green dot for your top two priority. Use a clear dot to identify a priority that is important but not in your top. And you have two for each. You have 4 total votes. Does that make sense? So go ahead and take that green dot, click on it, copy it, and then paste it over to the side, and then you can move it around wherever you want. And each person can drop down 2 green dots and 2 white dots so that we can see in real time how we believe as a committee which areas are most important.
And what does the white dot represent?
White dot is a recognition by us that we believe this is really important, but the 2 green dots are more important. So if you're struggling to figure out, you're like, God, these 4 things are really important, but these first 2 have to happen before the second 2, right? Or it could be that there's more low-hanging fruit. Remember back to that first exercise that we did, how do you define a top priority? Maybe there are 2 that have more low-hanging fruit with greater impact. All right, maybe it's that you've identified 2 that are easier to implement than other 2. This is an opportunity to take note of that, but also to identify using the white dot what you think is also important, but just slightly less than the others.
Okay, Nicole, I'm with Clyde from way before. When you were explaining how to use the Jamboard. Someone walked in my office to give me
Alright.
a quick,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you click on,
Thank you, Jesus. Go ahead.
someone walked in
too
my
embarrassed
office.
to
I
ask.
missed all of that. You okay?
all right, here we go.
Go.
So put your cursor on one of those green dots and click, just one click.
Okay.
And in the upper right corner, you're going to see 3 little dots. You see that? Click on it and then click on duplicate. And now you can move that dot all over.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, so you say click on the blue. Now I'm looking at Boris's screen right now. Am I using his screen or I'm going over to my the link that you sent us?
The link.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm in the link and you say click on the green dot and what? There are 3 dots to the right.
Yep.
All right. And
Upper
do
right
everything.
corner.
Uh-huh.
And you're going to duplicate that dot and then you get to move it all over.
Okay, and move it. Yeah, but how do I move it over to Boris's?
Oh, it just happens.
Oh, really?
Boris is sharing your screen and my screen.
Okay, so I can move it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Gail.
Oh, well, you know, look. You
Yeah.
have not because you asked not, right? All right, so duplicate.
Yep, that's working good. Yeah, you're getting it.
All right, but I don't know, Boris.
Yeah, yeah. And then you click and drag. So you're duplicating your dots and then you're gonna click and drag.
Yeah, I think because I'm using 2 screens, that's what it is.
Yeah, my screen is just showing what everybody is just inactive, but the one that's gonna be active is gonna be your actual
I think
screen.
that because I'm
Yeah.
using 2 screens, because I'm not getting it. But anyway. It's not going over.
Nicole, do you mind sticking the link again in the chat? I had to sign
Sure.
off and sign back in and I lost the link.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh.
Now, not that I'm going to do it, but can someone cheat and do more than 4?
You totally can, but boy, we trust you, Clyde.
Clyde, you're funny.
Clyde, if you cause a tie though, man, it's all over. Let me tell you.
The gloves are coming off.
Now that I can work it.
Now, Boris, I don't see myself as a voter, but I'm in there making circles.
Hit reload, Kristen, to just make sure.
Where's that?
Where's that?
Yeah, you're definitely in the document, Kristen.
I see you in here. I see you.
Okay,
Yeah, you're in there.
okay, great.
Okay, Gail, and I see you're getting some dots.
Yeah.
Oh.
This fun.
Yeah. It's fun. I used to do this for a living in rooms with whiteboards.
Yeah. Those were the days, huh, Boris?
Oh, I miss it.
Me too. I mean, in those settings, you're moving around, you're sharing the same space and time. It's a very, very different process, but
Yeah, but this works.
in the
This works.
absence of that, this does fill a good role.
This works, yeah.
By the way, there were a couple in here I really liked. I think Gail had one around working with minority, small, diverse suppliers. Is that yours, Gail?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like that would be a great one maybe for the supplier subcommittee
That's industry. Mhm.
or
Mhm.
industry. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I wanted to acknowledge, I thought that was a good one.
yeah, and we've had some good conversations on that end, actually, in the industry partnerships.
Oh, I
So we've
imagine.
been talking about that. So this confirms that the subcommittee is on
Yeah.
the right track.
That's great.
We'll just give maybe one more minute. And it's okay to take stock of what's here and to reflect on what you've identified. And if you want to move something around, feel free to. You're not sad. Moved one of my own, so please feel free. Okay.
Hey, Mark, I see that you're in the meeting. I haven't heard your, are you able to get in the board as well, Mark?
Yes, actually, I did get on the board and I did duplicate and put a green circle.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
And you know you're allowed 2 green circles and 2 white circles
On the entire board or on each item?
on the entire board.
I got 2.
All right.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So Daryl, from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing a lot of convergence in 3 particular areas. And I think item 1 and item 10 are very closely related.
And what's the third area? Item 4?
4. It almost is, I think, item 1 and item 10 could be one and the same. And that 10 would incorporate tools and processes.
I agree.
Gail, I saw you give a squinched lip. Do you see something different?
No, that's correct. I was just reading. Yeah. I have new glasses.
I want to give space for everyone here. Can I see through your reactions? Either a thumbs up, thumbs down, however you're feeling. Do you think that we can merge item 10 and 1?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find, okay, 1. I think, aren't 1, 3, and
They're all
yeah,
very, very close.
yeah, 1, 3, and 10 all seem the same to me. Yeah.
Right, but and if you look at 10 though, it's more overarching, and 1 and 3 actually fit within the empowerment dimension.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and whoops.
I was getting carried. I overstepped my bounds there, Nicole. Apologies.
It's okay. I mean, that's why we're using a Jamboard, to get people engaged. What I'm doing right now is I am moving to the next board and bringing our priorities over. And I don't think that we have said that one's more important than the other. It's that we have 2 priorities here.
Yeah.
And so with that, if we move, let's go ahead and move to slide 4. And I think you're there, Boris. So the next question is, what information do we need to know to make recommendations within these spaces? Because this is going to help us think through which speakers we should be inviting, or what types of speakers we should be inviting moving forward.
Can I ask a question about the previous slide again? Is number 11 the same as 4? Sort of, 11 was making it a core competency. 4 is the pathways to develop an understanding.
Oh, I think so. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. I like somewhere in there just the word competency, core competency. But anyway, we can tweak it. But as long as you sort of agree that that's the spirit of it.
So moving 11 in with
11 under 4, and even micro competency credentials is sort of.
How about it's identifying the essential pathways needed for the federal acquisition workforce to develop a core.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we need to shift shared understanding and pop in core competency.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think we can wordsmith that later.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you.
So I've added a sticky on the following page to ensure that that gets popped in. And David, thank you for letting us know we have 30 minutes left. And I think we're doing good on our time. So let's ask ourselves, what information do we need to know within these 2 spaces?
Yeah, I think for number 1, we need to know what FAI and DAU are doing.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe we should use this time to pop
Or
that
GSA.
information in a sticky. Let's give everyone an opportunity and use our time so that, and crowdsource these ideas.
It's a good idea.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's focus on priority 1. Use your sticky notes. And I see folks are populating both priority 1 and priority 2. Feel free to tackle both.
Can you all still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, and then using a similar process as we did before, go ahead and use your green circles to flag the areas that you think are really the most important here. Having had some time to reflect on what your colleagues have inserted as well. Under priority 1, I see 2 here for best practices. So I'm going to eliminate the second and move the dots on over. Y'all are getting good on this Jamboard thing. I'm also looking at our top 2 priorities. And priority 1, we have best practices review and what works best. Those 2 are also quite similar.
Okay, we're down to about 15 minutes. I'm wondering if we should make some next steps decisions.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it seems pretty clear that we need to learn from others about what's already in the works, hearing from the acquisition workforce about their challenges. And so, in taking a look at the key areas here on the left, we have the best practices and what works. Our ultimate goal beyond this, because I think we've made a lot of progress today, this has been really tremendous, is to ask ourselves, who do we know within this space who can help guide us?
Yeah, I think we would want, for example, the leadership of DAU and FAI to come in. If that was your question, Nicole.
It is.
I think, we could inquire as to whether someone from 18F or the U.S. Digital Services has thought about the area of sustainability. They may have insights into some of the technological challenges.
Can you say that one more time, Ann?
Oh, there's two teams that come to mind for me. 18F, which is a technology team within GSA, usually who've come from industry. And then the U.S. Digital Services, which are also ex-tech people that have come into government for short term. We may tap into them. I may still know some people at both, but certainly GSA can link us to 18F folks. And find out whether they have explored this area of whether there are impediments to promoting green sustainability within the technology space. And if so, it would be interesting to hear their insights into that. Are you going to say something, Daryl?
I was going to see, can we list that on the next? Oh, okay, there you are. I see it's Boris. Maybe you can go to the next.
Yep, there we go.
Okay. How about what about listening to current procurement, the acquisition workforce? How are they managing through it now? What considerations are they using as they make decisions? And are they even interested in? Would they even be interested in getting credentialed? Another credential or credentials or a core competency around this. I mean, I'd like to hear from them.
Yeah, we've talked about having a focus group conversation with them. And in light of the conversation today, I think it just punctuates the importance of bringing this in and talking to them. And probably not just one, but a handful of individuals who can.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it may be a focus group, and we think about if there's some tool out there to also crowdsource among the workforce. That I know GSA, I think, has access to those tools. So we could both kind of go broader at scale and also have real live professionals talking to us.
And I think Katie Newhouse had some suggestions on people that she's been talking to. I was thinking when Katie gave a presentation, she had some ideas.
Absolutely.
And also, since we refined our requirements now, maybe one of these previous speakers we had could come back now and be more focused.
Who were you thinking of, Clyde?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I can give you the name. It was the guy. I give you his name. I think it was Callaway. I think
from GSA.
Yes, one of the guys from GSA was talking about what was already in existence and what they were doing. I think it was
Brandon Conway.
Yes, I think it's the name. Yes.
And Melissa, and I've now forgotten Melissa's last name, Boris, who she's more on the implementation side of things.
Right, Melissa Minor, and she works with Kana.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been working on the training piece for Federal Acquisition Service. So I think she'll be a really good one.
Yeah.
I think Katie had a recommendation of someone from EPA.
So let's continue on I mean, we can identify potential individuals. We can also look at these broader themes and ask, so what types of speakers do we need? And then reach agreement on the general category of speakers. And we have our administrative meeting next week. And that should be our homework. Our homework should be, in light of these general priority need areas for potential speakers, who specifically do we think should be dropped in here?
Well, we need EPA's voice here.
I agree. I agree
Yeah.
deeply.
Yeah.
And would you see that in priority 1 and 2?
Yeah, I think so.
Nicole, will we have access to this?
It's in our folder.
Okay, good. Because we can continue to add to this for our
Absolutely.
meeting next Tuesday.
Yeah. Are
This
there?
is-
Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole.
I was just going to say it's already in our folder. So if you go
Okay.
there now, you will find it.
What I couldn't find were the old presentations. Did I just miss
Yeah.
those?
I couldn't find those either.
Like from
Yeah,
Katie and from,
Yeah, you should be able to find them in the website. Actually, that'd probably be the quickest way to get to them. You should be able to
Oh.
get to them either on the website or the share folder. And the
I
share
didn't see
folder,
them in the share folder, but I'll look.
they should reside within the folders that have the meeting date. So we have subfolders that have a meeting date.
Ah, okay.
And if
Thanks,
you go in
Boris.
there,
I'll
you'll
take.
see them. But either way, you can get them. That would be the easiest way to get them.
I should
is the
know
share
by
folder.
now, every time I ask something, it's user error.
Now, I understand that there's an internal review taking place across GSA and DoD and other spaces related to current trainings, training needs, where the gaps are. If that's happening, I think it would be really useful to tap the shoulders of individuals who are part of those conversations.
So right on. I think we need DoD's voice here either way, even if that's not underway, since
So
they're
let me-
two-thirds of the
quickly-
spending.
Let me quickly ask, Jeff, if you're still around, do you know if that's going on? Would you know anything about that effort?
That's what I was speaking about earlier. That is part of the migration to the new curriculum.
Okay,
So it's very connected with that.
okay,
And as I put in the chat, let us know more specifically the topics or the areas that you would like, and we can absolutely facilitate some speakers and
Okay.
help you to meet with them.
And I think that will be our task for our next meeting.
I agree.
So to the subcommittee, if you have other ideas, please drop them in here. And we're going to pick up on this next week.
Thank you, Nicole. This was really great and very helpful. And I think it was a great use of our time as we use the meeting as a
Mhm.
workshop.
Yeah.
And we'll continue this next Tuesday. However, I do want to ask one more time if there are members of the public who'd like to speak at this time. If not, I turn it over to Boris or Stephanie to close this out.
yeah, and I saw Cassius there. I think Troy had to drop off. Cassius, anything else you wanted to add? It's a really good conversation today, but I just wonder if you had anything else you wanted to chime in with.
No, thank you, Boris. I was just going to mention, just say, Daryl, hats off to you and the entire committee, Nicole. I mean, it was really informative. I think there was a lot of progress and a lot of opportunity to add everyone's different perspective from this this blueprint, if you will. And so thought it was really good working opportunity. It also gives the other committee is an opportunity to build off as well too. So I look forward to all the committees coming together when we do have our meeting to share some of those ideas, because I think it could be helpful to each other.
Great.
Okay. All right, thank you, Cassius. And the other thing else I was going to add is we're working on a template for the meeting on the 12th, January 12th, where we bring all of the subcommittees together under the full committee meeting. So Stephanie and I are putting together a simple template that all the subcommittees can use to present sort of their progress report and where they are and whatnot. So that'll make that easy. So that should be coming before too long.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, Stephanie, if there was anything else you wanted to add on that.
No, not much more. Just want to let everyone know that I did put the link for the examples in the chat, and they are it's in the member folder if you
Okay.
need it.
Yep,
Okay.
got that. Thank you.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say, and I'm really glad that Kristen was on this conversation and Steve was in earlier, because we're thinking about how to work this process with the other subcommittees. I think what you guys did today would work really well. And I think we can definitely leverage some of the process for the other subcommittees. So that definitely was playing on my mind as we were doing this today. I think that was it for me. I don't know if you all had anything else. I think you got pretty clear marching orders, and I don't know, Steve, Jeff, Jeff, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
I just want to thank everyone. Really well-run meeting, very good process. See a lot of progress, and I see some very clear potential, both short-term and long-term recommendations. So just thank you. I appreciate it. And please, let's keep going.
Right, everyone. See
Thank
next
you.
All right.
Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Meeting
Bye.
adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.